Good morning.
Good morning.
So we're moving through the book that was chosen for the fall, Practical Metaphysics 5, and this chapter is on faith. And I'm excited about this lesson because Butterworth has taken on a whole new look, like he has for all of us who've been part of this journey, and starting at the very beginning. And just quickly to review, it starts out in the back flap, and I think this is so key and so important for all of us, is that God has already done for each and every one of us all that's going to be done. Now, for 50 centuries, we have continued to pray for a God out there to come do something special for us. And Butterworth says it's all been done. It's now up to you and I to connect with that allness and let that come through us. As he said here, the potential's there. But we only begin to live it as we begin to recognize, acknowledge it, and then realize it in our affairs on the day-to-day. As he says here at the very end, it's our privilege of understanding and then releasing that and giving it birth into our affairs. Even the beginning of this starts a little bit different than a lot of teaching in New Thought and even in Unity. And what he's saying is that all of it has been done. All of it. That's where allness comes from. And the reframe of the word God is what he did in this first chapter. So he's very effective here, reframing some old religious words. We started with the reframing of God. And he's using the word allness to express the creator, the source, that's omnipresent, present in each and every one of us, but also present in everything living. And I like his reframe here because what's so powerful, at least it has been my experience walking through this journey, is that it's allowed me to drop some of the baggage I was still carrying around the word God or Father. And as I move to this word of allness, it opens up my consciousness to all, which is really when you get to the truth of the belief system we have in omnipresence, omniscient, and omnipotence is about allness. The other reframe, instead of using the Christ within, he used eachness. Eachness being that each of us, every one of us here, has the all of the allness within us as potential. Now, do we always live out of that potential? No, of course not. All of us here, including me, probably had many challenges during the week when we, or maybe it was just me. But that's the spiritual journey, is getting connected with this allness and recognizing when we're disconnected from source, which, going back to that first statement, it's our privilege to stay there. This is 2 weeks ago when we talked about thoughts, and this created some issues. I had some emails about this, that incidents do not cause thought. Never have, never will. It's the meaning that you and I put to the incident. And this teaching in this chapter is difficult because no longer can we blame. I can't blame Jacqueline for my bad mood. I put the meaning that created a bad mood. Or blame anyone else. Or the weather. Or politics. Or the economy. It's the meaning that you and I place on the incidents that creates the thought. And what he's teaching here is, I believe, in everything that I've read of New Thought, is the highest level of personal responsibility there is. Taking total control, total responsibility for every thought that we have. That's a pretty high bar. And we kind of thought we got through that difficult chapter until we hit last week. And I was sharing the Tuesday class when I asked how many of you would join me in the 7-day verbal diet that he challenged us with. We had a lot of these. Half raised of hands. And then they look next door and say, well, are they? Well, I better get my hand up. And it was very interesting to hear the comments I heard at the end of the service. I had a couple spouses said, oh, this is going to be a good week. Because the measure that he gave us, LS, GBS, let something good be said. And the challenge that we took was 7 days of only saying what we wanted in our lives to be good. I'm glad no one's here there was no 7-day verbal diet police. He said very clearly, it's not complex, but it's also not easy. How many found the 7-day verbal diet this week easy? We have deeply, deeply seated habits, cliches. I didn't make it out of the board meeting that followed when I violated the verbal diet a couple times, I think. But what do you do when that happens? You simply, just like when you were learning to ride a bicycle, you get back up, dust yourself off, the scrapes, get back on your bicycle, and keep going. And that's what he's talking about, is we bring the awareness of how important the words are in our lives. Because we talked about this last week. In the beginning was the Word. That translation of word is not very good. The Greek was logos. And logos means power within, not a word. It means coming forth from the power within, from the power of allness. And as we speak from there, the other way we talked about it on Tuesday night is learning to speak from our soul. Is what provides power or logos. And we create our affairs, we create our lives, we create our relationships, we create our health from logos. Very interesting, he states that nowhere is words powerful. Words only become power when we have the logos behind it, when we have that energy of the allness behind the words that we give. Charles Fillmore called the logos the supreme idea of the creative power. Words are causal, with the power behind them, not casual. And that's what we talked about last week. The subconscious does not know a joke. You know, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I have, where someone will say something not very nice, and they go, oh, no, I was just joking. And I said last week there was a lie that was taught us when we were children. Sticks and stones will break bones, but words will never hurt you. More people sitting here today have been hurt by words than any sticks or stones. So they are causal, but they can also create negative as well as the positive. And that was the whole approach for the 7 days of staying focused in our good and nothing but our good. So we move today to faith. Faith is a religious word that means many things to many different people. If I was to have each of you write down what faith means to you, it would be different for all. If you were raised in a very fundamental faith, it was blind faith. And every time I asked questions, I had all the questions for the Sunday school teacher, and it was, well, you just need to believe because it says so. Who says so? The Bible says so. Believe that. That's called blind faith. And it worked for centuries because of the way society was set up. But as we began to question, well, what does it mean? And we began to understand that faith can take on a whole different meaning than just believe because it says so. We've seen an evolution of faith. One of the words I like to put in faith instead of faith is what I'm confident in. is where my faith lies. What are you confident in during your day, during your life? What's your go-to? That's going to describe for you and demonstrate for you who and what you have faith in. As we begin to move, and Butterworth says, you know, we had confession of faith, right? We were taught that. I believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And people were taught to say that over and over again. If you ask them, what does it mean? They don't know. But it's faith in something outside of them. And what Butterworth says, I want to start taking a look at what does faith from source, from allness, from God mean? And what does that feel like? And what does it look like? And as we go through these next couple minutes, I think you're going to see Butterworth take faith and change it completely, at least it has for me, in a way that I have never seen a teacher do. And I have found it so incredibly powerful to understand faith at a different level. But here's also faith. This is what fear is faith. Worry is faith. Anxiety, insecurity. These are all faith. You have more faith in that than something else. And we go back to the opposites, right? The two opposites. Faith in good or bad. And we get to choose by what? The same thing we always get to choose by our focus and our attention on what we place our confidence in. Is your confidence more in what's fearful? Or is your confidence in the peace and the harmony, the strength within you? And you notice all those, faith can be outside, right? That was a blind faith. Faith in something outside. I can also have faith in something that's not so good. Who chooses who you have faith in? No one but you. What you demonstrate in your thoughts and your words and your actions to what you have confidence in is where your faith lies. And as we've been moving through Butterworth's book, he comes back to this all the time. We must continue to remember that God is centered within us, within you and within me. And that centeredness and knowing that begins to change the whole idea where your faith lies. Remember, in the very beginning of New Thought, we talked about what will set you free. Knowing the truth sets us free. And Butterworth says we've got to keep going back to this, that the allness of the universe, the God, the source, the creator, is centered within you and I, within us. Allness is centered within us. And all the love in the entire universe is centered within you and within me. You know, there's a country song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. And what he's saying here is we got to remember we don't have to look anywhere. We have to remember, we have to wake up. Awaken to the truth, and knowing this truth is then what sets us free. And having confidence in that is true within you and within me is a whole new level of faith. A knowing of, a confidence in what is true within you and me. And so faith begins to take on this understanding, because later on it says faith without works is dead. So faith with just an intellectual thought isn't what we're talking about here. It's dead. It's this doing the work within you to know what is true about you, and that knowing and that confidence and that belief in is where your faith begins to emulate out into your life. Charles said this: faith that functions from principle, and the principle he's talking about here is just what Butterworth said, that the knowing that God is within you, the allness within you, and all of the love in the universe is already within you. When you have faith that functions from principle, based on knowledge of truth, to know that certain causes produce certain results is the bedrock for a whole new understanding of truth. And that's faith. Butterworth calls it practical faith. I call it true faith. It's knowing the truth that's within you that gives you the confidence, the knowingness to do what you need to do. But let's go on. Butterworth continues. He says, within each of us, we have a dimmer switch. Full blast to down. We have it back here. You can take electricity still flows, right? Potential's still there. But in the dimmer switch, you can determine if you want almost no light coming through or you want it full blast. Here's the question. Who's dimming the love within you, spirit within you, the peace within you, the joy within you? Who's got a hold of your dimmer switch? If we go back to the 3rd chapter, no incidents out there can create dimmer switches. Only the meaning that you and I put to what occurs creates the dimmer switch and has our light turned down instead of going full bore. And as we begin to understand that we are the ones turning down the dimmer switch in what we think and what we say and what we do, we now have that knowing of truth that will lead us to the freedom that we've been promised and blessed with. Emmett Fox was another New Thought writer, and this is probably his most famous little brochure that he made called Golden Key. It's a great tool around this to go to your truth or to go to faith in your knowing. And he says, and very simply, don't focus on the problem, focus on the allness within you. What happens when something shows up and we begin to put meaning to it as a problem? We begin to focus, don't we not? And we talk about it, and we call our friends, and put it on Facebook, and tweet, and all those things. Reinforcing the problem. And what's simply in this book, what Emmett Fox says is change your focus. Because if you're putting all your attention, all your energy, all your thoughts, and all your words on the problem, that is where your faith lies, on the problem. Or the lack, or whatever word you want to put in there. He goes on to say this, stop thinking of your insufficiencies. Think of the all-sufficiency of source, of God, of all this. Who's turning down the dimmer switch for you? Only one person can do it. Or stop thinking of your illness. Think of the allness of healing life. Change your focus is the works of faith that we were talking about. If we continue to stay focused on the problem, we continue to stay focused on the lack and the limitations, that is where our faith lies. And that is what will be true for us continuing from here on. There was a time when people believed the world was flat. Actually, I found there's people who still do. They're called flat earthers. Did you know that? They even have a syndrome. But when they believed the world was flat, did it change the reality of the truth? No. They wouldn't get in Columbus's ship because it was going to fall off the edge into oblivion. But it didn't change the fact, the truth, that the earth was round and that Columbus or nobody else fell off. It's no different than you and I choosing to put faith or our belief or our confidence in something that's not true. It doesn't change the reality. It doesn't change the truth. It's only the truth for you as you continue to believe the earth is flat. And what I love about New Thought, and what I love about Unity, is we continue to look for revelation and intuition that teaches us how to connect with what is true and what is real, and not some old beliefs that we were given before we were 7 years old. The master teacher said this: do not judge the appearances, judge it with the right thought, with truth, with a knowing and a faith of what's inside of you. So no matter what's going on out there, no matter what people are doing or saying, those are incidences. You have the ability and the God-given right to choose. And you can choose no. I'm not doing that. I see what's going on, but this is what I know is true in the reality. And make the change from flat earth to truth. All of us have the ability to do that. It's God-given. When you come on the planet, we can do it. So what Butterworth is saying here is we're not trying to change things out there. We're trying to change our focus. Just as Emmett Fox said, golden key it. Go to source within. Find the truth of the situation. In the LSGBS, the first thing about it was take a quick breath and listen before you speak. I tried that this week. Didn't work so well sometimes. But at least I have an awareness and a place to go back to and say, well, that didn't work so well. What didn't I do and what would I do differently? And what I would do differently is take that breath and listen. And what am I listening for? I'm listening for the divine guidance within. Butterworth said the next step of this is to allow Source, the allness, to speak through us. And we talked about that a lot on Tuesday night. How does that change what we do? Because that's a different way of doing life, is taking that breath and asking before telling, and then listening. And the divine guidance that flows through is available to all of us when we decide to make that change. This is the change of focus he's talking about. You've seen this. I've gone back to it many times. The vortex of energy, the vortex of emotion. Where are you hanging out? And where do you want to go? And this is all available, and these tools will take us there if we continue to go back and re-practice and retrain those neural pathways that are already in the brain. But the happiness and the joy and the bliss is up the vortex. And we get there through these tools of taking total, complete control of our thoughts and the words that we speak forth. And now, what we put our faith in. What are we putting our confidence in? That I have the ability, you have the ability to be able to do this and move up the vortex? That's a good place to put your confidence in your faith. Because it's true. The earth is round. And you can move up the vortex anytime you choose. It's like opening the window to more light versus taking the dimmer switch with our negative thoughts and our negative words and our negative actions, which pull the shades down. Sun doesn't change. The amount of light is the potential, but we're talked about at the very beginning. It's available, all of it. The allness is available to each of us, all of it. And by taking the shades up and down, or the dimmer switch left and right, we determine what's flowing through us and comes through and goes into our affairs and lights the path, straightens the path, we're told. A new definition of faith. Another reframing that Butterworth does. He defines faith now as moving to the highest vibration. Think of the vortex. How do you get to the next level in the vortex? That's faith. What do you have confidence in? What are you making choices to change so that you can move up? This week I learned a lot about my habitual thought patterns and what I speak. Every week we can learn more, and faith is moving up to the highest vibration possible. What is possible for you and me? There is no limits. All is possible. We don't want to think anymore in limitations. We want to think instead of limitlessness. No lack, no limits. What can we go? There's always more for you and I. And as we begin to think from what else is more, we begin to refocus our faith, refocus our confidence in, refocus our knowing of truth to more, not less. Scripture said this, according to your faith it will be done unto you. I believe Butterworth has nailed an understanding of faith that now makes sense here. When we're talking about this, always going to the highest frequency, going always to the highest vibration possible, what happens then, according to that, you doing that, it will be done unto you. Or in Mark it said, everything is possible for the person who has faith. If you are living at the highest level of the energy vortex, is that not true for you? That everything is impossible? I believe it is. But this reframing and redefinition of faith, I think, is a much clearer way for us to get there. As we've said before, faith without works is dead. It's in James. The faith that we're talking about is the work to get there, to get the confidence in, to get the knowing of, to begin to understand what works, what didn't work this week. That's my work to do, and it's your work to do, to get to faith that begins to deliver what we know that it can. I'll go back to what Butterworth said. God is already centered within you. What is your consciousness centered on? That's the key question. Not whether God's within you or not. It is. That's a definite. That's a knowing that you can have. But the dimmer switch, the shades coming down, is how you and I do that with what our consciousness centers on. Every minute of the day. Every day of the week. Every week of the month. That's where we change it. Positive faith is turning up the switch to the next level for you. Knowing that the whole universe believes in you. Do you know that? God believes in you. Source, allness believes in you. 100%, completely and totally. Knowing that the whole universe believes in you is the level of faith that Eric's talking about here. He wrote this, and I wanted to read it today. Because this is, to me, the paramount shift in this positive faith. He's called it, God believes in me. Allness believes in me. I believe from this consciousness of the centering process in God. I am centered in God, source, or allness. And out of that centering, I know I have the capacity to do all things that need to be done. I know I can release a guidance activity that will enable me to make the steps that I should take, make the contacts that I need to, do the kinds of things that are before me this day, and do them easily and do them well, because I'm in tune with a process that's always present and never absent. I believe and I act from that believing attitude. And as I go out in the everyday in this consciousness, I will find that I will be confident, I will be more. There can be no fear. There can be no anxiety. There can be no worry. There can be no hesitation along the way of life, because I know the activity of God is flowing easily through me. The whole universe believes in me. That's a new definition of faith. We need to do the works to get there. We need to release the limits and the lacks that we have to really get it inside in a knowing that the entire universe believes and has confidence in you. He gives what Eric used every morning. He said, God of the allness is centered in me, believes in me, and the whole universe believes in me. I know this because I'm breathing. I'm alive. I am alive. And the Creator put all of the confidence that she has in you. Now this begins to make sense. At this level of faith, knowing that the whole universe believes in you, with faith of a small mustard seed, you can do anything, we're taught. But I think we didn't understand the level of faith. Faith can move the mountains. This kind of faith. Or your faith has healed you. The master teacher never said, I healed you. He never said, God healed you. He said, your faith healed you. And it's this level of faith that I believe he was speaking of. Say yes to your more. Let go of the less. And say yes to positive faith. Let's go to silence. Again, I'm going to do Butterworth's meditation in chapter 5. You just take a couple breaths, please. Get centered. Feel that confidence that the universe has in you. It's there for you to experience and for you to feel. Let's be still and get this feeling that God's allness is centered right within you. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't create it. You can't change it. You can't alter it. You can't make it more real. This is true spiritual reality. As Plotinus put it, the whole universe is rushing, streaming, pouring into you from all sides while you just sit here quiet. The entire universe is centered within you. All love, all power, all life, all creativity is centered in you right now. This is the reality of you. And as you think about it and believe it, then you're centered in this process. You're centered in God, the allness, and you make contact. And thus, through your life, through your mind, through your heart, through your hands, there's a flow of dynamic activity. It's the natural activity of your life. You are simply releasing that which is really yours, and you allow it to flow. So we see you right now going forth from this place today in tune with this God activity. It is the dynamic potential of your own being, effectively released so that you can do the kinds of things you need to do and do them easily, do them effectively, and do them successfully and fulfillingly. You will do this, and we're grateful for this consciousness. Let's just for a moment feel grateful that God is centered in you, that the universe believes totally in you, grateful that you are a glorious, wonderful instrument through which the creative process flows easily and fulfilling.